Councilmember Inger, can you hear us okay?
Old dog,
I called the Crow's office Tuesday. Oh, you did? Left, got a voicemail. His assistant or executive left a voicemail.
Councilmember Inger, can you hear us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Just fine, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councilmember Abdelgawad, Councilmember Inger, I did send you about 15 minutes ago an email with the materials associated with this. If you have the ability to get in there, the order of the email is this, as I had kind of outlined there, because I know you can only open one thing at a time.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, December the 18th, 2023. Tonight is our annual joint meeting with the Raymore Parks and Recreation Board. And one of the things we want to kind of start off the conversation with is a project that staff has been working on. And the first item on our agenda tonight is the comprehensive trails presentation that would include the board's knowledge and assistance as we move forward on this particular project. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fearborn and let him start off this evening.
Thank you, Your Honor. So for about 4, possibly 5 serious budget cycles over the course of the past half decade, each time I have brought the annual fiscal budget to the council, there's been considerable discussion about the condition of our trails, both park trails, roadside trails, which are part of our transportation network, but as of late has really centered on the condition of the trails in our parks and the magnitude of the project that would need to be undertaken to bring those up to standards that we expect of our infrastructure here in Raymore. became a very, very serious conversation with some attempts and proposals to possibly put some Band-Aids or do some very limited action within this year's budget. So I was approached by, following the budget meeting where this was discussed, I was approached by the park board chair who had watched the meeting and kind of shared some of his thoughts on it. I'm sure that those are reflective of the entire park board. I know that the council shares some of those thoughts. And basically, he was asking me if there was ever going to be any way where we could all sit down together and talk about the problem, and if there was no small task, if there was any way that I could think of across the entire board to try to figure out a way where we could at least start biting this off a little bit at a time. To that end, that brings us here tonight. Think I might have an idea or two that I can offer up. I think I might have one idea that I can offer up. And so I thank the chair and I thank the mayor for their support in getting us all here tonight. They know a little bit about the plan that we're going to be proposing, but I thought what we would start with is let's talk about what we're talking about. What is our trail system and what's the condition of our trail system and what would it take to get all of the trails up to APWA standards or exceeding those standards. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mustine for the first part of that report. Mr. Crass is here with his staff if there's any technical questions you might have. Mr. Mustine.
Thank you, sir. So tonight, what I've done is we provided you a handout, which is somewhat of a summary of our trails programs or the status of our trails that we currently have right now. What I've been asked to do is give a brief overview of the history of our trail system and then kind of outline the way the trails are categorized here in our city, and then break down the high priority trails that we've in our surveying and within our inventory have determined are the most critical in terms of getting repairs done. So first of all, I just want to give a quick history of our trails. Prior to, I arrived in the city of Raymore around 2002. Prior to that time, there was only one paved hard surface trail in the city of Raymore, and that was Memorial Park, which is what we call the Arboretum Trail now, and it's the squiggly, the little thin small trail there. That's the only trail we had in 2002 that would be considered a hiking trail or a walking trail. Everything else was sidewalks. Shortly after that, the city staff began a program, a sidewalk gap program, kind of connecting those dots, but then the park board at the time got very interested in placing trails with new park projects. Where that really became a reality is in the 2007 no tax increase bond issue. The majority of that issue for the park's issuance was trails. And if you look at our trail system within that first page, almost all of them but Memorial Park, Hawk Ridge Park, TB Hanna, and Centerview were built using funds from that 2007 no tax increase bond issue. The problem is at that time, there were really no standards in terms of what we held to for development or building of those. It was very budget driven. It was what could we afford, how much could we get put in, and that's what the park board and the park staff at the time did. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing some decline in those facilities is basically the best way of putting it. I do want to mention that on average, a city of our size, or categorized in our size, and I wrote this in there so you guys could see that, between the population of 20 to 50,000 people, average is 15 miles per trail. We are above average on that, and we're at the lower end of that population range. So we feel like we're in a really good spot in terms of trails per population. And it's one thing that we see time and time again on our surveys, that the people rank the highest in priority is our trail system. They want more trails. They want us to take care of our trails. And I feel like that we're answering those calls, and that's one reason why we're here tonight. So we do categorize our trails into three different main categories, and the first is the right-of-way trails. That's the most visible. Those are things that you would see that are handled through the Public Works Department, but they're mainly along our roads. Lucy Webb Trail, you'll see those. There's one in Eagle Glen. We do categorize 58 Highway as having partial trail system because of the width of the where it's adjacent to the highway there. And so there, Madison Street have trails as well. Dean Avenue has one. So those would be trails that are taken care of by the Public Works Department and I would say repaired or replaced within the transportation funds, not park funds. The second category would be park trails, and those are trails that are specifically within the park boundaries or not adjacent to streets. That's where the bulk and the majority of our trails we're talking about tonight are occurring. You can see we've listed every one of those, when they were built, and the mileage of those. And so those are trails that the park board is responsible for finding mechanisms to fund, repair, and replace, and to improve those trails. The third would be what we call private trails. I'd like to back up. The park trails, we're talking about hard surface trails, not natural trails, not the mountain bike trails. These are asphalt or concrete trails is what we're talking about tonight. The third category is private trails, and those are ones that meet our requirements but are still maintained through subdivisions. The best example of that is the trail along Boxford's Drive in Creekmore. Alexander Creek has one, the Meadows, and then Oak Ridge Farm has one as well. And we're also, new developments that are coming along have those trails, and frankly, we like those. We like the ones that they meet our standards. They are included in our public infrastructure, but we don't necessarily have the responsibility of taking care of those. So those are excellent to have. Are there any questions on the history of the trails or the way we categorize or function within that area? Okay, Mr. Fearborn, you want me to continue on? Okay. So what we've done is, as we began this discussion, I know the park board knows this and my staff know this. We do have an inventory. We talk about our trails all the time. We do have them prioritized in what we felt within our own capital plan. We can meet those requirements. As a matter of fact, one of these trail systems here that we're going to talk about tonight is programmed in our FY26 capital program. But I'd like to say before we start, earlier I mentioned that there were no real standards or mechanisms that we followed when we built those. That's changed since then. In about 2010, we widened the trail to a 10-foot wide trail. That's what we currently are still at, but whether it be asphalt or concrete was mostly budget driven. Concrete is obviously what we want. It lasts the longest, and we've proven that with our current trails that we have. In 2014, I believe, 2013 or 2014, we actually adopted the APWA standards, which is what Public Works uses, and it is the national standard for trail infrastructure. So that is what we have been building our trails by since I've been the director, and I got here in 2015. The first trail system, or first trails we built, was in 2018. Since that point, that's what we've been using. So it's 10 foot wide. The asphalt has current standards of base and the type of asphalt, and these guys here can get in the technical portion of that. But if we're going to build it and the funding's there, we're going concrete. So that's what we're talking about tonight. So the first part is Memorial Park. Obviously, the older trail in the Arboretum was built in the 1980s. I actually visited the Historical Society a couple weeks ago, found a picture of that trail being built. It was dug out, had gravel down there. I mean, they were doing the way it was supposed to be done. There's a picture of the first walking bridge. It's not the original. It's been replaced since then. But the first walking bridge was built in the early 1970s. Found a picture of that too. There are no trees. That's called an arboretum now, and there are no trees in there at all back then. It's a pretty neat picture. But what we're talking about in 2018, we built the loop trail, followed APWA standards. So we're not talking about that. It's the yellow highlighted area is what we're talking about. It's a remove and a replace. It may not be the exact squiggly lines. It could be a little bit different given the proximity and the width change and stuff. But it also includes the replacement of the 3 bridges to match our boardwalk system that we've been putting. There's already one boardwalk there in Memorial Park, and then a extensive portion of it in Recreation Park, and obviously behind Centerview. So we want to keep with that look and that standard. But that is what Memorial Park we're looking at doing. It's just the yellow part. The reason why that particular one is held up is because they built it right, and over the years we've crack sealed it and maintained it. It's just time. It doesn't meet any of the standards that we're currently under, and the walking bridges are definitely in need of repair and replacement. Any questions on Memorial Park? Okay. The next one is Recreation Park. We're holding kind of the same standards here. In 2018, we added some significant improvements, mostly what we like to call the wagon wheel, which is the area around the baseball diamonds. You'll see, and then the area, also in 2019, we did an improvement where it is mostly boardwalk, but it's concrete, and it goes from where the old skate park was all the way up to the roundabout and up near the pond. That is actually the standard we want to build all of our trails to, 10-foot wide concrete with the boardwalk in place. And then the area around the parking lot was asphalt, but was also built to the proper specs and standards. What we're looking at this point is the yellow highlighted area of that trail system. And I think if any of you have been out there, you know that it is in desperate need of replacement and repairs. There's stormwater issues within there. So basically, what we're seeing is over the course of the past 10 years, we have taken out sections of that and reported and tried to kind of piece it back together. Where this trail is failing is it was asphalt poured on compacted soil. It had no base. And it was done in order to be able to afford to complete the loop. And that's the best of my knowledge. I really wasn't involved with that project when it happened, but I am involved with its deterioration, and so we need to get that fixed. So we do have the 2 portions that have arrows. Those are portions of the project that we had programmed for this particular year. We have actually already bid that and are looking to bring that to the council. The park board's already approved it, and we're looking to bring that to the council early in January. But that is to cut out segments near the playground that tree roots have taken and actually move and relocate it. And then that back corner that is consistently underwater and flooding, that is to do some grading and drainage and to fix that. Both of those areas would be fixed to the 10-foot wide concrete where we want it to be, any other replacement. So that is Recreation Park. Any questions on the park? Okay, keep going. Good Parkway is the original, what we would call greenway or linear park trails. There are 2 portions in Good Parkway. We internally, staff calls it Good Parkway North and Good Parkway South. The north part is right by Stonegate Elementary, basically Lucy Webb to Stonegate. And then Good Parkway South is Stonegate Elementary down to North Cass. I want to talk about Good Parkway North, the original part first. That is the first trail system that we built outside of the original in Memorial Park. We did that 8-foot wide. It was asphalt. We did a 6-foot or a 6-inch gravel base under there, and it has held up very well given it's in a floodplain. We've had to do a few repairs to it, but it's pushing 20 years old. It's met its life expectancy. This particular portion of trail was programmed to be replaced due to the life expectancy, not the deterioration of the trail. So that is already there. There are some areas that we need to go in and do some stormwater repair where the creek has over time eddied up close to it and it's compromising a little bit. We need to do some work there. But that particular portion in 2003, originally built, we're looking, that's a full removal, replace with 10-foot wide concrete is what we're looking to do. The south portion was built in 10-foot wide concrete. It was 2007 bond funding, but it was actually built in 11. Took a couple years to get to that point. So we had already changed our standards of how we build by that point. But there's significant stormwater damage, and if you use our trails, you'll know that a great portion of that is underwater most of the time. And I would venture to say that right now it's probably still muddy from last week's rain. What we're looking to do is some extensive grading and raising of that trail so that the water doesn't crest it and it flows down and do that work there. And that is Good Parkway. Any questions on that? Just a little bit more and I'll be done, I promise. The next portion is the linear trails, and these were the ones that were also funded in 2007, but weren't built until 11 and 12 in that budget time frame or that fiscal year time frame. They are, again, 10-foot wide concrete. They've held up very well, but there are areas in, like the switchback at Timber Trails, and then the area in Lemoore, which is close to the creek and close to Brookside. Those areas are getting compromised by the natural environment of where they're at, and panels have cracked. And so we wanted to go in and remove those panels, stabilize that area, and re-pour those. Not the entire trail, only the portions that are broken is what we're looking at there. And finally, we've added the bollards on the back page. We have two standards of bollards, the yellow ones that do drop down, and then we have the black ones. The yellow ones are more for the outskirt areas or the right-of-way trails that we can drop and get to quick. The black ones are more our higher profile. You'll see them behind Centerview we're replacing them at Recreation Park. You also see them at TB Hanna. So this portion is just to include the purchase of those bollards that need to be replaced or areas that never got them. And that is the program that we're looking at tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions. I didn't see any winces from Mr. Fearborn or Steve Rulo, so I didn't lie to you or withhold any information. So I believe my part's concluded, sir.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Nathan. So the next portion of this, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Fearborn as we begin to talk about how we can potentially fund it and accelerate our opportunities for replacement. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. So after I was approached by some of the council and the park board chair, started sitting down and taking a look at first the information that Mr. Mustine has been able to compile, because we've gotten with you all several different times. Hang on just a second, Jonathan. We've gotten with you all several different times. It's a lot of money. We're talking about slightly over $3 million to do all of the information that he has here. And I'm going to be giving you a comprehensive spreadsheet on that. We're dealing with a very dynamic bidding environment and construction environment right now. We see month-by-month changes. 1 month it's up 2 steps, then it tends to sink back a step. A lot of different things to look at. Up to now, we've also had the problem of, because it is so expensive, and we have looked not at a comprehensive program, but at repairs throughout the system where they're most necessary. Even the repairs would require either a significant bite out of operational spending, a significant bite out of the day-to-day revenues that would be garnered, say, within the park sales tax fund, or taking out general obligation bond. Here's the problem with that. You do not want to take out a 23-year obligation of debt service on a capital improvement that's only going to last 10 to 15 years, which is what was kind of estimated from all these repairs. So one of our first challenges was, how do we look at making sure that whatever this program does lasts a long, long time? All of the proposals that you've heard from Mr. Mustine tonight call for full APWA standard or exceeding and concrete trails. Concrete trails have a minimum 40-year lifespan on them. So we've got some things that we can kind of look at. If we go back and we take a look at general obligation bonding, however, every single time we've gone for general obligation bonding, it has been all used up very quickly. Our next general obligation bond will more than likely be going for a justice center. The costs for that continue to spiral, and we will more than likely, even though our assessed valuation is going up very well, we're probably going to be using all that money on a justice center and the ancillary projects that are going to go with that, as it's looking right now. So a lot of challenges. As I was looking at this over the course of weeks, and gosh, almost 3 months ago now that I was first approached on it. So the budget was completed, budget got finalized, and I was going through and I was proofing our debt service. And it occurred to me one Saturday morning that we have a special obligation bond. There are several different types of bonds. And what I've talked to you about with the 23-year bonding is general obligation. General obligation bonds are based and taken out on full faith and credit of the city of Raymore. If it's a no tax increase, we do not have to go to a vote of the people. Or we still have to go to a vote of the people, but those tend to pass very well. But we have a number of other different types of bond issues that we can take out that I have to justify every single year and reconcile those to what we presented to the council. We have revenue bonds, which are based on very, very specific revenues coming into the city. And then we have a secondary bond issue to that, which is called a special obligation bond, also based on a specific 1 or 2 revenue streams coming into the city, normally based on a sales tax. In this case, kind of reconciling those back, we have, and you can go ahead and hand this out now, Jonathan. We have a 2016 special obligation bond that was taken out, and some of you may remember this, was taken out to pay for our streetlights. We own, in the city of Raymore, all of our streetlights. And it was slightly over a $2 million bond issue that was a refunding of a previous special obligation bond that was set to expire. And now so when we did that, we purchased our streetlights. We no longer had an operational payment to lease the streetlights, and we were able to dedicate that money to bettering our retirement system for all of our employees. We took it up a notch with our operational spending that was released when we didn't have the lease payment. The proposal I'd like to present to you all tonight for your consideration is simply that we consider utilizing that expiring 2016 bond payment, take out a new special obligation bond in the amount of $3.5 million that would bring all of the parks and parks trails up to APWA standards or exceed those standards with the programs that Mr. Mustine has presented to you tonight. The issuances presented within this packet would be a 15-year issuance. It would bring, again, the trails up to a 40-year standard and would only be a debt service payment of 15 years. So that mismatch that I was talking about with our general obligation bonds earlier goes away. Our debt service would expire long before the trails would reach the end of their useful life. I'd like to say it's as simple as the presentation I just now gave you, but it's not. I've said to the mayor before, I like the elegance of simplicity. This one does not hit that particular standard. In the interest of fairness, what you do see in the second to last page is the verification. It's this page from Piper Sandler. This is using conservatively high interest rates right now for the bond issue, and you can see they reconcile those bond payments out. So to just kind of walk through it, if you could spread out in front of you the three funds, I'd kind of like to start with how it would impact each of the three funds involved through, we need to reconcile it back and make sure that it works, because it's easy to just throw it out there. So the first fund I'd like you to kind of take a look at is the Capital Improvement Fund, Fund 45, which is the first one listed on your list. And I have tried to color code the paragraphs to how it actually impacts the spreadsheet. So it would be this 45 spreadsheet that you're looking at. And the first item on there you see is the Debt Service Special Obligation Bond 2016 for the streetlights. In 23-24, the current fiscal year that we're in, you note that from last year, those payments cut in about half as this begins to expire. So in 23-24, you're looking at a debt service payment total of $229,063. That goes on within this fund for 2 more years, and then it's gone, of $233,563 and $232,875. Up to now, I would point out, this fund has been able to bear over $500,000 debt service payment, and has always, if you look at the available fund balance at the bottom, has always continued, even with a very, very long litany of capital projects, has been a very healthy fund. $1.3 million, $1.2 million, continues on, gets down to $1 million if the proposal is taken. But then it begins to rise back up considerably and exceeds $2 million, even with some projects still plugged in. What you see just below the debt service 2016 issue would be taking out the debt service trails program issuance. And you see in 26-27 and 27-28, the payments that are associated with that Piper Sandler sheet, once again being picked up by this fund. In the interim, however, if you now turn to the Park Sales Tax Fund, so the park sales tax and the stormwater sales tax, just a little bit of history here, that tax by ballot issue had 40% of the park stormwater sales tax going into the stormwater fund and 40% going into the park sales tax fund. That is by ballot issue, so that has to happen every year. The additional 20% out of that fund is discretionary on the city council's part as to which fund it will go into. For a number of years now, that additional 20% has been split 10% into parks, 10% into stormwater. In order to bear, and as a matter of fairness, because these are parks trails, I just kind of thought the council and the park board might like this joint agreement. I took the entirety of the 20% council discretionary, and you'll note in that first yellow line under additional council determined, in 23-24, it's about $161,000. That doubles in 24-25 and 25-26 with the proposal to place the entire 20% into the park sales tax fund, and thus have the park sales tax fund, then you see below, make the first 2 payments on this debt service issuance for the trails program. So below you see the first payment of $175,000 and the second payment of $355,000 within this program being funded up again by the additional funds going in if the council were to agree on the full 20%. It seemed like a fair proposal since they're parks, trails. Then down well below that under the capital projects section, you see in green that the Good Parkway improvements, Mr. Musteen had mentioned that in '26, we actually had $400,000 budgeted for those. They would now be within this program and be done within this, so that $400,000 has come off. It has the Parks Fund getting a little low. We've been lower once or twice on the proposed budget. Gets down to 41,570 with this proposal, but then it begins to rise back up and starts to get very, very healthy again once those payments drop off in fiscal years 27 and 28. Then the third fund that is in front of you all is the Stormwater Sales Tax Fund. Again, what you see in here is the 160 drops to zero because now in those 2 years that are highlighted in yellow, because now the entire 20% is going into the Park Sales Tax Fund that we just visited. Not a whole lot else to point out here with the exception of the stormwater culvert rehabilitation, which has nothing to do with this particular program. But we did have that, if you're looking back at the budget, the proposed budget that has been approved by the council, that $265,000 that you see in 23-24, we actually had that 265 scheduled for all 4 of those years, where the 3 out years you now see 100,000. I am proposing to drop that to 100,000 because we base the 265,000 on the inventory of the culverts that we have, not on the work that needed to be done. It was if every single culvert needed to have rehab work done on it, then that is what it would cost. As you can see from my write-up sheet, even in this year, we're not proposing to spend the entire 265. We only have 180 that we've identified in the very first year of total projects that need to be done. In addition, that fund remains relatively healthy, so if we had to plug an extra project into there, we still have good available fund balance in 25, 26, 27, and 28 if we needed to. Not the simplest proposal. It crosses 3 funds and a number of knowns, but needed to be plugged in. It would allow us to begin, we could take the debt service out and receive the funding immediately after the beginning of the year. It would not impact our margins whatsoever on any additional bonding because it's special obligation bond. We do obviously have the revenues to make the debt service payment. If the council were to approve it and the park board would approve having this come out, there is 2 years of debt service payment coming from the Park Sales Tax Fund that we would be asking the park board to okay. There are an additional 2 years of it coming out of the Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund. And then I think it would be a very, very good time after that to come back and review and see if we wanted to alternate years. As you can see, when you look at the Capital Improvement Fund, there are a number of parks projects that come out of that in any given year in any event, but in the interest of continuing a good relationship between the park board and the city council that we have, maybe you'd want to alternate, maybe 2 years out of the Park Sales Tax Fund. Maybe the council says, you know, the street lights were always coming out of the Capital Improvement Fund, but that could be something that we could address in 4 years when we have a better picture of what both of those funds are doing at that time. We do know and have full anticipation that both of those funds are going to continue to operate on a healthy basis. And with that, I know I'm throwing a lot at you. It's a little bit complicated, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I know that's a lot to be thrown at you in one evening, a lot to think about and to take in. This is my second briefing on it, and it's still a lot of information. So, and I've had time to think about it and look at it. So, but I personally feel it's a wonderfully creative way for us to resolve our trail system issues that have been nagging us for some time and will continue to be such if we don't go at it aggressively, and this is one aggressive way to go at it. So, but I'd open it up for discussion. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up? Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Sherburne and staff for this, putting this proposal together. Very thought out, very methodical, as the mayor said, and thank you to Mr. Troutman engaging to get this conversation going. Absent this proposal, what timeline are we looking at to achieve this? What we have been looking at to achieve this?
Good question.
Excellent. So bonding on special obligation bonds, I would still insist that it be a competitive bonding. You could either do private placement, just like general obligation bond, you can either do private placement or competitive. Competitive takes a little longer to set it up, but we could actually have the funds, I would imagine, in the bank no later than the end of January. We would be bidding out the project. It would be my proposal that we either, if the council were to approve and the park board would be okay with their end of the debt service payment as proposed tonight, at the exact same time that we're putting out the information for bidding the bonds, we could be putting together a proposal. I would say it makes sense to me right now, subject to a lengthy discussion with my finance director, that both the revenue from the bonds and the debt service payment is outlined in here, or the payments that would actually go into making the project payments, like down in the gray area that you see here, that those either come out of the park sales tax fund or the restricted revenue fund, one or the other. I have a feeling I know where she's going to be leaning. We prefer to have the fund that's impacted the most do this. So funding could be in place, the funds there for making the payments by the end of January, a couple months worth of interest, and then Mr. Crass, what do we think as far as the project itself is concerned?
Or Mr. Crash, you said January of '24? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh,
If we didn't.
if we didn't do a bonding,
Yeah.
Both sides?
if we didn't do a bonding, we can't even get the good parkways within the park sales tax until '26. $1 million,
Which is the highest priority project.
which is the
at
highest
time at this
priority
point.
as far as dollars are concerned. Good parkway, probably at the very least, and with some additional types of funding, would be 3 years after that.
So we're looking 2028,
2028 to 2030.
2030 of completing what we have in front of us, but what you're beginning to articulate with Mr. Crass's input as well, starting in '24
Well,
to begin to complete.
and I would like to have it all wrapped up by '25.
I don't know why we're still talking about it.
But Mr. Crass may throw some very, very cold water on that in just a minute.
Thank you.
Anybody, Tom or Sonia, do you have any questions before we move?
I don't have any questions. I don't see any reason why we would say no.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mike, can you give us a reason to say no?
No, we actually met with Terry Snelling this afternoon. He's one of our concrete contractors. This is a very aggressive project. There's like 5,000 cubic yards of concrete to be placed. He indicated on a good day, they can get about 200 feet of trail because of supply issues with the vendors. He strongly recommended, so we can get a hold of people's workloads early, that we be on the street like in February with the ad. This will likely be a 7 to 9 month project. So if things go well, we get a year like this, maybe we can stretch till Christmas. Otherwise, it'll be spring of 2025. The good news is that limited disturbance. I mean, the trail goes in, there's a little bit of work along the sides to get the trail restored. There's also kind of we've got to hash out a little bit whether we bid one big contract or several. Several would require that all of the trails be out of play for all of next year. So we've got to kind of work through that, but we definitely need to be on the street in February so we can get the contractors' attention that have enough manpower to do this work.
And if you look at the reconciliation sheet that has everything on it, you will note when you see at Memorial Park, you see replace entire trail pavement, unit price $120. You go to Recreation Park, replace entire trail pavement, $110. Good Parkway, $130. The differences in each of those numbers is, as Mr. Crass had indicated, the labor that is involved in accessing the different trails, which is going to be higher or lower. Rec Park, relatively wide open. We can get the trucks in. Going to be a little bit cheaper per unit price associated with that. So that's if you're eagle-eyeing this and you note that discrepancy in the pricing, but what you will note is our highest 10-foot concrete trail per lineal foot on there, which then ties back up to that, is 109, which has just been done. So that is our highest number. So we feel like we're using good, high, conservative numbers as far as giving an estimate on that. We've also plugged in a very high contingency in each of these of 20%. And you will note that the total is $3,002,500. And I am asking the council to consider a $3.5 million bond issue. If we do not need that additional money, I would propose that we be coming right back around and talking about, even though we do have money plugged in for the street trails, the transportation, the public works trails, that $500,000 then be dedicated to those trails as well. If we don't need it, that $500,000 will have increased by about 6% per year, because that's about the interest rate that we're earning now. So we should have a considerable amount, if necessary, to attack those trails when this is all done.
Tom?
Thank you, sir. I think this is a great idea. Another example of Mr. Fearborn's incredible creativity with financing. We saw this with the streetlight program. If you didn't know, we're one of the few municipalities in the metro area that own our own streetlights. Everybody else rents them from Evergy now, I guess it is. Is that correct, sir? And so you saw from the figures, we're about to pay those off. You got to look at the whole picture, though, something that will have to happen with this. We have been giving back, and I'm very proud of that, both the Parks Board and the City Council. We've been giving some really beautiful things to our citizens, and I love it. It's great. However, demand has increased exponentially. It is imperative, and I mean imperative, that we pass that use tax so that we can add people to the Parks Department to take care of those trails after we build them if we go through with this proposal. They still have to be maintained. The grass next to them has to be mowed. They have to pick up trash, and there are other things that go along with that. So we would need everyone on board for passing that use tax in this city and make it stick this time. But I do think this is a great proposal, and I'm in support of it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Don.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm ecstatic. I do appreciate all your hard work in going through all this, and just the community effort on putting it together. I think everyone will be thrilled with all the complaints we hear about having these trails get done. It'll be safer, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kevin?
Yeah, just a question and then comment. I don't know how much engineering's done in this, but I take it we do that in-house. Would that be your department, Mr. Krass?
Yes, sir. We've done quite a bit of preliminary design to get to this point, but yes, it would be done in-house.
Yeah, I think it's a very creative proposal, and I don't know who was the creative accountant that put all that together, but my hat's to them. I could use some of that personally. Thank you.
Did you have something else, Superintendent? Okay. Sonia, do you or Tom have anything to add? Councilman Ingert, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Just a real quick question. I'm assuming that the concrete, is the concrete going to be to a city standard? If not, what would the standard be? I remember when we put the curbs in out at Morningview, that we knew once we got these new curbs in, we were going to be last on the list before we ever got to see new curbs. And so one of the things that we did was we changed the aggregate on our cement and used some slate and other items, I don't recall which they were, but to enforce the time frame and the usage and the breakdown of that concrete to help us reach our end goal, which was hopefully 20 to 25 years.
Go ahead, Mr. Krass.
Sure. To answer that, we no longer allowed limestone aggregate in any of the concrete by code, and that is really the culprit to the deterioration. So everything needs to be the granite aggregate. We kind of refer to it as the KCMMB mix. We've been using that for quite a while in the curbs and in the flat work throughout the city, and it's been based on cylinder testing. It performs very, very well.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody from the park board have any thoughts, or Steve?
Yeah, I just want to say, I saw, gosh, and I can't even remember the day, I think it was in October, and you guys had your meeting. I try to watch them online if I'm not here in person, and the pain I felt from the city council of trying to decide what needed to be fixed, what could we fix, what do we have with funds, and the pleasure of being able to go to Mr. Fearborn and Nathan and say, hey, here's my thoughts. And I could feel it, we feel it constantly. I know some of the comments brought up were, hey, we haven't heard from the park board. The park board knows the firing squad you guys have been under with this landfill thing, so we've tried to stay away, but we can feel the pain. And I think the biggest thing for us was if we fix what I call homecoming bridges, because everybody gets their pictures taken on those bridges for homecoming, even all my daughters did and so forth. But then somebody else is going to say, well, why not the trails at Rec Park, or why not this over here, and why are we flooding? So going to these two and them having an open mind of, hey, let us look, has just been so impressive. I got to be honest with you. I thought they'd come back and say, well, maybe we can do a half a park, or maybe we can do this, and then we get into which park. So the work that these guys have done, your group has done, is just been incredible, and it was more than I ever thought. It was more than the board ever thought you guys would do. So just getting this far, we want to thank you guys, because it's been a thorn in our side too. We just didn't know how to handle it. So we were hoping Nathan would win the lottery and then that would take care of it, but I don't think he's even been playing. So, but I just wanted to thank you all for considering the hard work done up front, and then you guys looking at it, and that just makes me feel very good as the chairman. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I know that when Mr. Fearborn and I were talking about it, he hadn't yet spoken to Todd Goffey over at Piper Sandler, and I know when the light bulb kind of came on for Todd, as well as Mr. Fearborn was explaining some of his ideas, and I know they scratched out these plans together, and and we're told this, it looks good, it looks like it can get done. And I was excited to hear that. And I know that Mr. Fearborn's burned a lot of midnight oil over this particular issue to make our community even prettier than it already is and more user-friendly by our community. So thank you for that, sir. And does anybody have anything else on this? Yeah.
After looking at everything, even with the fund balance going forward, it's going to be reduced over the next 2 years with this. I find it's totally acceptable because we can deal with that. We got a fantastic staff with the park board, including Mr. Nathan. We know we can handle it, anything that comes down the pike. And and I'll be honest with you, I consider this quite ingenious. It's actually a marvel of economics. And it's going to accomplish what we feel in the park board is a necessity, a major necessity, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, I know there are other things, aren't there, that we generally have? Pardon me? Oh, that's right. But that's, I mean, we can reserve that for after the Parks and Rec joint meeting. But next item on the agenda was an appointment. We finally found an individual in Ward 1 that was excited about the potential of serving on the park board. His name is Patrick Keys. He has a degree in recreation management and has served as a coach and father of a young boy in the programs here, and thought it'd be a very interesting assignment for him as a volunteer to our community. Nathan has interviewed him, and Steve has met him. So, oh yeah, we'll hand out the information about them to you guys, so you can take a look at it. But that appointment will be proposed at the next meeting next Monday night. Is it next Monday night? Oh, we're off next Monday night?
That was mine, sir.
Oh.
If you want to get the other.
Oh, okay. Well, the next full regular meeting, whenever that shall be. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
What is that, Dave?
Under other.
Yeah. Just for council's information, next week is Christmas, so there will be no meeting. The following, even though I wanted to have one really bad. That's right. The following week is New Year's, so there will be no meeting. So we will be in recess from meetings until January 8th. That will be a regular meeting of the City Council. With luck, we will be getting formal approval from you all on an emergency read for what was, I feel, thumbs up tonight to go forward with this bonding. And then, as you know, we kind of do a parameters that we give you all, and then we come back to you with a fill in the blank on the parameters for that special obligation once we've done the bidding. So get all that into place. We will be putting the bid specs together and getting those out immediately. And as Mr. Krass indicates, it would be really nice if we could do a series of ribbon cuttings in the beginning of fall in 2025. I think that would be very, very nice for our citizens. Again, City Council will be in recess for 3 weeks. This will actually be, unless we needed an emergency meeting of the work session on the 5th Monday of January, this will actually be our last work session until the beginning of February. Because we have a number of landfill issues, I suppose the council might be alerted that there is a real possibility we may need an emergency meeting on the 29th of January. We'll let you know. That concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Did you have something, Jay?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we don't meet with Parks Board that often comparative to our own meetings, and we've opened the biggest gift under the tree. I thought it might be an opportunity just to kind of see if we can draw out any comments from them, especially on thoughts on future direction of where they think the parks where Parks Direction might go and what they think the citizenry is looking for as far as where we go in the future. You know, more linear parks, that kind of thing.
Anything? Steve?
I'll be happy to start with that. Earlier, Jay, you said something that after I've heard this tonight, I'll be out campaigning door to door starting about January 2nd. I think it's important that, yes, this passes because the taxation on our staff is just so, I mean, and I know you guys have heard me bark about this for a long time, but this next coming year will be my 28th year in Raymore. Didn't even know where Raymore was, had no idea. A friend of mine lived here and said, hey, come out here. You can't afford Lee Summit, come here. And we moved here in 1997 with my wife and kids. And the things we have now versus we've had just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20, now it's just about the upkeep and seeing the taxation on their faces and Nathan's faces. This has got to pass. And whatever we can do as a board, we're into that. I think future, we'd love a dog park finished. I think everybody who's been on the park board's been that way. The expansion of the RAC is going to be incredible. Gets us more into our own facilities than the schools. Nathan and I meet once a month, whether we need to or not, and just brainstorm. And I could give you a list of things we've looked at, but anything from archery to, you know, we think of everything that this city would need. But right now, in my opinion, we've got to tuck in and get this done so that we can keep preserving it and it looks the best. Because by far, I travel a lot, and for our size, that demographic that Nathan gave us, 24 to 50,000, we're head and shoulders above many, many cities. And so I think it's right now getting it, you know, getting it maintained and keeping it good looking, and then we can move forward on some items for sure.
Yeah, Mr. Fairborn, go ahead.
Stop it. We had hoped for the dog park to be a part of the Parkside development. The Parkside development is stalled because of the landfill. An excellent developer, Mr. Dan Carr, can't find builders. He has put in over $3 million worth of infrastructure up at 163rd and Sunset, and has not been able to sell a single lot, all specifically because of the landfill threat. Met with him last week, and my next meeting with the city council in a work session format will more than likely, I've come up with kind of an unusual scheme that might get us the dog park sooner than later. It calls for a kind of a reversal on a traditional development agreement idea. I've kind of touched on it at 50,000 foot with the mayor. I'm still trying to make sure that I can reconcile everything within that, but Mr. Carr certainly seemed excited about the possibility, and will more than likely at that first meeting in February be presenting that scheme as well, so that we can get the dog park dirt turning for that possibly in March of 2024. Just wanted to add this.
No, thank you. Bill, do you have something?
Yes, sir. I don't know, as long as I've been on the park board, I had certain visions. Of course, I don't believe in the habit. What the? Thank you. That was not a hairball. All right. In all the years I've been on the park board, I've had one vision, and that was extending our facilities. You know, parks, we have passive parks and active ones. And ultimately, of course, the plans, the ideas and dreams I have are going to be a long time in coming, because it's going to be a continual work on project. But that's ball fields, extending baseball. I'd like to see that done. I'd like to see tournaments brought to the city, because we do have excellent ball fields in place. We just need to expand them. The park system as a whole is probably exceptional for a city this size. We have more green space than most. and we still have a lot to develop, and I can see a good future there, and I just believe as long as we stay work hand in hand with the council, because that's what it's going to take to get those things fulfilled, the ballparks, baseball fields, soccer fields, and all the sports venues, including seniors for myself. I'd like to see that done. Thanks, Steve. But that's what's going to take, and that's the vision I have. Unfortunately, it's going to probably take longer than I'll live. But ultimately, we'll probably have that, and that's what I expect this board to do.
That's actually a great segue, Bill, because when you talk about the acreage out south off of 195th Street that will soon become part of the park system, and we talk about the development of that into either soccer fields or other ballparks, it's going to take more than the existing staff that we have right now. And to look forward to that takes a larger staff on board now in order to prepare for that expansion in the future. So again, it boils down to what Steve said and what Mr. Holman said, is that we really do need to be very serious about how we approach the education on the use tax, which the council intends to take up at our next regularly scheduled meeting to put on the ballot in April, because it not only the park board, but just the expansion of the city itself and the development that's occurring even outside where the impacted area of the potential landfill might be continues to grow, and it's going to call on city services exponentially over the next 5 years, and that includes Parks Department, Police Department, and Public Works, of course. So, because the systems are going to only grow and make their maintenance nightmares grow as well. So, I really do hope that folks take this issue very seriously, because there is so much that is going on here in our community, and we need the support of personnel. It's what we provide as services back to the community, and that takes people, and I'm hoping that they will understand that. So thank you for that segue. Ken, did you have anything?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, Chris, you got anything, buddy? All right. Josh, got anything? Okay, all right. All right, well, thank you all for being here this evening. Unless there's some comment from the council under other, we'll stand adjourned. All right, thank you.